We are going to get started. Welcome to the first PHMC contract entity meeting for this fiscal year. My name is Joy Weems. I am the Provider Services Manager for PHL Pre-K, and I will be your facilitator for today's meeting. Our agenda today includes a welcome, which I just did, and we also will have a welcome question in our next slide. And then we'll have updates from OCF. They'll give a welcome as well, followed by a presentation on kindergarten transition, and then a presentation on the Education Law Center. We will also share supports this year for ECMH and family navigation. And then we will have a presentation from NEAR. And we will wrap up our meeting today with PHMC updates. So at this time, if you could respond in the chat and tell us what is your favorite back to school tradition for your program. I shared in the meeting earlier that my favorite back to school tradition when I had childcare programs was back to school night, right? And really, the teachers and I were always really excited to share with the families what was new for the new school year and to share anything that the children had done up until that point. So if you could share in the chat, and then we'll just call some of them out. So I see open house and back to school night. Okay, someone shares the same one I had. Same thing, back to school night. Yeah. Okay, back to school night. I have a bunch of buddies with me today. Oh, book giveaways. Okay, great. Have grandparents come and read to the children. Oh, that's a great way to welcome the children back. That's great. Mhm. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you to all of those who shared their back to school traditions. I do want to mention that we will have an opportunity for questions after each section, right? So after each presenter, we will, allow you to ask questions. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Denise Bermudez from the Office of Children and Families.
Thanks, Joy. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Bermudez, and I am the Director of PHL Pre-K for the City of Philadelphia's Office of Children and Families. And it is my pleasure to be here and welcome everyone to the opening contract entity meeting for the 25-26 school year. I hope you're all having a wonderful start to your year, and I want to thank you all for taking time to join us today. But most importantly, I want to thank you for the passion and dedication that you bring to Philadelphia's youngest learners and their families. Our work together is more than just providing care. It's about building strong foundations for children's futures. And every classroom, every lesson, every moment of encouragement matters. And it's because of your efforts that the children across our city are gaining access to high quality pre-K experiences that set them on a path to lifelong success. This new program year is an opportunity to strengthen our practices and continue raising the bar for what high quality pre-K looks like in Philadelphia. As providers, you are at the heart of the mission. You open your doors every day to nurture, educate, and inspire. And today, PHMC, Spark, and the other organizations here today will share updates and expectations so that together we can ensure that every child has the opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive with the highest of quality in mind. And as we begin the program year, let's reaffirm our shared commitment to excellence and impact. I'm so excited for all that we'll accomplish together and grateful for the work that we do alongside such dedicated partners. Thank you once again for being here, for your partnership, and for the extraordinary work that you do every single day for Philadelphia's children and families. I hope that this meeting is very helpful and informative and that you have a strong and inspiring year. And once again, I want to thank all of you for everything that you do. And as I always like to say, I'm really forever grateful for all of you, and I'm very proud to be part of this incredible team. Thanks again.
Thank you, Denise. All right. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Jennifer Harris, who will share some kindergarten transition updates. And then that will flow right into a presentation from our Spark Quality Center.
Good afternoon. So just wanted to share for kindergarten transition, we encourage that all plans be completed for children within 60 days of enrollment. That you be sure to complete your meeting note by January 1st and your registration note confirming that the child has been connected with a kindergarten location May 31st. School selection timeline. The school district has shared their timeline as the 2026-2027 school year is here to be here before we know it, right? But we want to be able to support the families in connecting with the school of their choice. So families can now begin applying and looking into their options. And this flyer is in the newsletter and on our kindergarten landing page to let you know of the different options that the family has in the timeline to just keep them on schedule. Family Corner. We now have a Family Corner. It was going out towards the end of last year's school year, but we will continue sharing this. It is to be shared with your families. We also will email it directly to families. So we do encourage when you're enrolling children that you add their email address, the family's email address, so that we can keep them updated on not just kindergarten transition, but also some activities that are available in the neighborhood that are free, some resources. We want to connect them to the early intervention services with our ECMH and a family navigator. We share about the peer program that is through Spark. So just trying to give the families a resource and some nuggets to carry them through their days. But again, the second page will focus on kindergarten transition, making sure that the families are in alignment with the timeline to get their children successfully enrolled for the upcoming school year. With that being said, we will be offering family webinars again this year. Our first one kicks off on Tuesday, September 30th at 12 p.m. as we will have Philly Schools Campus, formerly known as Great Philly Schools, come and present on learning about kindergarten options. This webinar is open to families as well as providers to just pick the brains of the Philly Schools Campus team to just learn different options of directing the families in the right direction. This link is available for you to register. It will be in a newsletter. We will also be hosting a webinar with the School District of Philadelphia to help families navigate the website of applying online, as well as Institute on Disabilities at Temple University to be able to support families that have special services to make sure it continues when they go into the kindergarten area. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tahana Williams. I am the Family and Community Engagement Specialist here at Spark. So I will just go over some elements of a kindergarten transition. So how to have like those kindergarten kickoffs, how to plan that fun activity for your parents, the process of things that you might need, so documentation, and also just some family engagement activities that you can do in the center. So my next slide, we'll talk about setting the stage for kindergarten success, right? So early transition shapes the long-term academic and social outcomes. So a smooth start reduces anxiety and builds confidence in the young children, right? So research shows that when children experience a positive transition into kindergarten, they're more likely to succeed socially, emotionally, and academically. So kindergarten readiness supports school success. So children who enter kindergarten ready learn to perform better in reading and math by the third grade. So the first few weeks of kindergarten really can make or break a child's enthusiasm for school. So planning thoughtfully can make a huge difference. So family engagement during this transition increase student achievement. Again, we all love family engagement, right? So for families, especially first-time caregivers and multilingual families, this transition period can be a little bit confusing. So clear communication, early outreach can go a long way. We also should focus on equality and making sure that every family, regardless of language, literacy level, access, gets the supports that they need. So it's not just about readiness, it's about relationship, routine, and resources. So the next slide, we talk about engaging families from the start, right? So beginning this transition conversation in September, so not in the spring, but early September. Why would we choose September? Because the beginning of the school year, this can set the tone for learning and family engagement, right? So introducing kindergarten transition topics early gives family time to plan, ask questions, and also explore like options without feeling rushed, including kindergarten readiness and newsletter conferences and take home materials. So you can have different strategies, maybe family communication monthly, maybe a monthly newsletter. So September, your theme can be kindergarten readiness. October can be applying for charter schools. January can be applying for public schools, right? So these are all ways that you can sit here and incorporate kindergarten readiness in conferences and newsletters. Also, normalize talking to parents about the daily routines and parent touch points. So again, having these conversations regularly, labeling the classroom activities that supports readiness, right? So like we're learning to follow directions just like you would in kindergarten, or maybe using visuals in the hallway. Stop kindergartner boards, right? Send some fun activities home. So ready for kindergarten activities that families can do together, such as practicing self-help tips, putting on their coats, cutting with scissors, opening up their lunch items, different things like that. The more you normalize it, the less it will be stressful for families. So the next slide, we're talking about the different things that we would need for documentation for the school district and other schools. So enrollment make easy, right? So this is just a tip for providers. So collecting these documents during the school year so it can support families during the process, and using a registration checklist to prepare families early to reduce stress later, right? So we all know that it's different timelines for different schools, charter schools, public schools, private schools have all different timelines. So a part of our job is to help families keep track of the key dates, right? So it's also a good idea to set reminders in November and October. So like I said, the newsletters, especially because charter schools open up around the end of September. And then you have scholarships that's also open up the end of September. So setting those reminders up early so that way parents will know. Helping families collect and store these documents early to make the registration process less overwhelming. So the next slide will talk about a kindergarten transition timelines, right? So these are just a sample of a timeline that you possibly can follow. So early fall, which will be August and October, right? So begin exploring school options, attend open houses, information session. During this time, September, October, this is when you guys can host your kindergarten kickoff. So have schools come out and tell parents about the registration process. Make sure that parents have their documentation, so proof of residency, birth certificate, shot records. Late fall, November, they can start narrowing down their choices, right? They already applied for the charter schools. They can start thinking about what their public schools in their areas, right? So gathering all that information, submitting applications and enrollment. In the wintertime, have those applications submitted, and then start submitting your applications for the school district. And then you can follow up on placement tests, school lotteries, or interviews. So during that time of February, usually the charter schools let people know who was picked from the lottery. In spring, so March to May, you can again confirm your school placement, attend orientations. And then in the summertime, just start prepping for that first day of school. So the next slide talks about families applying to charter schools. So Apply Philly Charter is one of the many ways that Philadelphia's families can apply for charter schools. So it's a system-wide application system. Like I said, it opens up typically in late September and closes in early June. July. I'm sorry, January. So that's why it is important for families to know all their options early, because these things open up early, right? So this is why I always also say to start a year before. So just because the family is going to kindergarten the following year, start talking to your families who maybe have another year with you guys until they go to kindergarten so they can know the process. And when families use Apply Philly Charter, they can apply up to 10 charter schools. So the next slide, families applying to charter schools, right? So again, majority of the charter schools are on Apply Philly Charter, but not all of them. So non-participating charter schools, families will have to apply directly through the school. So you will have to know that process. Again, this is why it's good to start early. It's lottery pick, so it's not it's randomized, it's lottery pick, and then again, families will be notified in early February. So then there's the how-to. So how do you apply, right? So you submit an application, you click the apply button. Families will have to create an account and set a password, and then they will create a family profile. So where they can add the student that's going to kindergarten, and if they have older students, they want their kids to all go to the same school, they can add them as well. So that way they can apply for all children. The next one would be, how do you support with this, right? So I suggest that you hold Apply Fully Charter help session, right? Where you have computers, you have internet access, and you actually walk the families through applying for kindergarten schools. This is one great way to create that family engagement. The next slide talks about Children's Scholarship Fund. So Children's Scholarship Fund is a privately funded program whose mission is to provide children from under-resourced Philadelphia families with financial assistance to tuition-based schools. The next slide talks about how can you apply for this, right? So they typically, again, opens up mid-September. Again, this mid-September trend, right? This is why it's important for us to start the process early. But they open up mid-September and they remain open until March 1st. But they do have a priority lottery pick in December. If you do not make it in December, then you can also have a second lottery in March. But they have a priority lottery pick in December. So that's why it's good to have families apply as soon as it opens in September and October. So that way in December, they can be a part of the main priority lottery pick. The next slide talks about the School District of Philadelphia requirement documents. So again, they have to have proof of age, proof of residency, address, shot records, health assessment, and these things have to be up to date. They have to have an up-to-date shot record, and they have to have an up-to-date health assessment. If they do not have a health-to-date shot record health assessment, then they cannot fully apply for the Philadelphia School District. This is why we talk about getting these documents early. Like I said before, if you know that a child is 4 and they have a whole nother year with you, just prepping families early about the things that they will need. So if you have a child coming in, you know that their physical expires September the 5th, talking to them early, maybe in July, to help them get a process of getting an extra appointment so they can get their physical done. Also, parents will need identification, so they will need their ID. And if that child has an IEP plan, they will need their IEP as well. So this next slide talks about just tools and resources for kindergarten families, right? Just some family engagement activities that you can do with your families. So some family engagement activities. So you can have a kindergarten open house roundtable night, right? So kindergarten kickoff. Invite school staff to come out, answer questions, offer breakout tables on topics such as like enrollment, transportation, uniforms, aftercare. Create a hope or goal wall. So in beginning of the school years, have families write down one hope or one goal that they have for their child in the kindergarten year and display that throughout your kindergarten transition kickoff day or your family night, right? Have that kindergarten transition week where you can make a whole big week of it. So maybe on Monday you can do backpack day, Tuesday dress like a kindergartner, Wednesday letter hunt, Thursday kindergarten book day, and then Friday maybe have your move up celebration. Also have a resource table, it's a takeaway station. So where you can print out flyers, visual guides, and community information. So how to apply for the local schools, health forums, information on local health centers that's in the area, information on free clothing and uniform support, and maybe information about what the free library is doing and after school activities. So this is my presentation, guys. I do want to just throw out there quickly that on September 22nd, we do have a larger kindergarten transition professional development that you guys can take. We have one on the 22nd at 1 o'clock, and we have one on September 25th at 5 o'clock. So if you would like a more detailed how to plan the actual kindergarten kickoff for your family, so how to get your families and schools involved, please feel free to register on our Spark website. Any questions?
Yes, Tahana, it looks like we have a question. What happens if parents do not have ID?
If they do not have an actual ID, if they have a passport, then they can use their passport. Sometimes I know the passport comes with an ID card as well. So if you have a passport with an ID card, they can use that as well.
Okay, I think that was it. Let me make sure. Or, well, I think the question is they don't have a passport either. They have no form of ID.
I would talk to the actual school and see what other forms of ID you can bring. Sometimes they will let you use an insurance card, long as it has their name and birthday on it. So I would just check with the kindergarten school that you're registering with and see what they will allow to accept.
Thanks. And then also, I just want to note that Margie from the Education Law Center, who you will hear from shortly, also put a comment in the chat that there are also supports and protections for children who receive early intervention from Elwyn who are transitioning to kindergarten. And she included a link to a fact sheet. So, all right, thank you, Tahana. At this time, I am going to turn the presentation over to the Education Law Center, and they will share information about supporting all young learners.
Great, thanks so much. So thanks, Joy, for having us today. My name is Margie Wakelin, and I'm with the Education Law Center. I'm joined here with my colleague Rose Werman, and so you'll hear from both of us today. What we're going to be talking about today is a shortened version of a longer presentation that we really encourage you to come to, that's being offered through Spark. There's 2 upcoming sessions, so October 7th at 5 p.m. and October 15th at 1 p.m. You can register through Spark. And we will take questions. I think probably easiest is take questions at the end if you have any. So we're focused on what are tools that you need to consider to design inclusive preschool programs. And we're particularly thinking about for students who are experiencing challenging behaviors. So if you can go on to the next one, Joy, that would be great. Okay, just a note about Education Law Center. So we're a nonprofit, and our mission is to ensure access to quality public education for all children in Pennsylvania. And education begins, as you all know, at birth. And so we begin our work at birth. So working with families that have kids in childcares, in preschools, and PHL pre-Ks through high school, whenever a student exits, whether that's through graduation or when they're 21. So we do a lot of work in Philadelphia, in the greater Philadelphia area, on behalf of children who are in early learning settings. If we can go on to the next slide, that would be great. So one thing, again, I'm sure this is not new to you, but just so you know, these slides here, anything that's underlined has links to research. What you do is so important. So high quality early childhood has an impact immediately in terms of increased academic performance and school readiness, because the years of birth to 5 are critical for brain development, the most important time for learning. So those immediate benefits are felt by our young learners in high quality ECE programs, but then also their long-term benefits that just really can't be understated or overstated. Graduation rates are increased, employment rates, greater financial independence, and also health benefits. So it's so important because to talk about access, and while all children benefit from high quality early or ECE programs, underserved children really make the most significant gains. And so underserved children is a term that we use that encompasses children who are experiencing poverty, Black and Brown children, children who have disabilities or early intervention developmental delays, children who are experiencing homelessness, children in foster care. Those children really, when they have access to high quality programs for early learning, we see some pretty transformed outcomes for them. So if we can go on to the next slide. So sort of the flip side of that is that early childhood exclusion. So exclusion through suspension and expulsion is an equity concern that is impacting, we know, families and children across the nation, but also here in Philadelphia. So as the American Academy of Pediatrics has explained, suspension and expulsion is not a developmentally appropriate response to behaviors for kids who are birth to 5. It doesn't teach children appropriate behaviors. It often removes them from a setting where they have the ability to learn. It also does not make classrooms safer. And when I say it's an equity issue, this really is, the research shows that our Black and Brown students are being excluded from preschools at rates that are much higher than their white peers, and they're being excluded for behaviors that are not, there's no research to say that they have more significant behaviors than their white peers. So there are thousands of kids that we know, even here in Pennsylvania, are being suspended and removed entirely from preschool programs. And one of the issues is that when a family is told that their child cannot stay at the preschool, there aren't often options that they can just transition to. And that last point here that talks about public funding not being available for sufficient amount of the need of who should be eligible for accessing these seats. If we can go on to the next slide. And so this is particularly, as I've said, Black children are being excluded at rates that are much higher than their white peers. Children with disabilities are being excluded and more likely to be suspended or expelled than their typically developing peers. Boys are also being excluded at a higher rate. So this is an equity issue that we're really grateful to have your partnership to be trying to address. So if we can go on to the next slide. And oftentimes whenever we're talking about at Education Law Center about preschool suspension and expulsion, we really need to be recognizing that there's disproportionate access within our city to those services that are necessary for these kids to be successful in your program. So early intervention is one of them. Also behavioral health services are another. So we know that Black and Brown children in our city, particularly in certain areas of the city, are not having access to these services that they're entitled to by law. We can go on to the next, and that's fueling some of the suspension and expulsion. So just to have a common language, suspension, this comes from Octel of what, and this likely is not new to you because I know when you were putting together your policies on discipline and for your families, that you were given access to information from Octel about suspension and expulsion. But the definition from Octel is that it is an action that's administered as a consequence of a child's inappropriate behavior, and it requires the child not to be present in the classroom or the program for a specified period of time. The way that we see suspension show up in preschool settings is different than how we see it in the K-12, where there are more requirements in terms of notice to families and hearings. But some examples: excluding a child from the classroom, putting them in another part of the building that's not, where their peers would be, sending a child home early or limiting the amount of hours that they can attend because of their behavior, preventing a child from attending because of the one-on-one aid not being there. If we can go on to the next slide. So Octel also defines expulsion as the complete and permanent removal of a child from an ECE program because of challenging behaviors or non-infectious health condition. And what that typically means is a disability, removing because of a disability, potentially because of a child, for example, having autism. So examples that we see is families are told that their child cannot return because they're a safety risk. They're told that they have to be unenrolled because they're not a good fit for their program, or they're told that their child can't come back because Elwyn hasn't staffed a one-on-one aide, or they don't have a one-on-one aide who's available. So these are the definitions that we're operating on when we're talking about suspension and expulsion, even though it may not be called that within a program. We can go on to the next slide. Great. I think Rose is going to take it from here.
Yeah, so like Margie has been talking about, suspension and expulsion are a problem in early childhood education settings. And there have been responses to this on both the federal side of things and the state side. So federally, we have seen the US Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education release a policy statement on expulsion and suspension in early childhood settings. And the goal of that is to prevent and then limit expulsion and suspension, and then advise on state action that states should be taking to support early childhood education providers as well as the families. On the state side, we have seen OCDEL, the Office of Child Development and Early Learning, put out an announcement called Reduction of Expulsion and Suspension in Early Childhood Programs in Pennsylvania. And what this announcement does is it requires all preschools in Pennsylvania to work to prevent, reduce, and then ultimately eliminate suspension and expulsion in their programs through a variety of strategies. And I know many of you may be experts on this already, but there's always something new to learn. One of the really important supports that can help children stay in school and be supported in that classroom is early intervention, or EI. So EI is a free program through a law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it is for young children, birth to age 6, who have delays in their growth and development or have disabilities. But what EI is supposed to do is connect children with individualized and necessary services that can help keep them in school. And those services are either going to be listed in an IFSP, an individualized family service plan for the really young children, or an individualized education program, or an IEP for children aged 3 to 6. But these documents, no matter which one it is, are legally enforceable. And if there are services in there, then the child has a right to receive those services as they are listed. So if the child should be getting speech therapy for 45 minutes a week per their IEP, that is what is supposed to be happening, and the child has a right to receive that. These documents should include appropriate levels of services and appropriate services for the children. So both the right kinds of services and the right amount of that service. And those services could be things like a one-to-one aid, special instruction, behavior support if there are challenging behaviors, OT, speech therapy, PT, transportation, and more. And one other note, children should be evaluated initially when they start early intervention, and then they should continue to be reevaluated, including reevaluations for their behaviors and specific to their behaviors if that's something that's coming up in the classroom. And in addition, there are some legal and program considerations to keep in mind when this is happening in your classroom. So first off, some of the major laws here are the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, the PHRA, which both treat disability discrimination in about the same way. But generally, what these laws do is they prohibit discrimination against people and also children with disabilities. And that includes any discriminatory actions in enrollment, these children's ability to access the programs, program administration, and discipline policies. Another thing that comes from these laws is that parents have the right to request reasonable modifications or accommodations in a program. And preschools need to make these reasonable modifications unless they fall into a couple of exceptions, such as if they create too great of a burden, an undue burden for the program, or would require a fundamental alteration, which would mean that the preschool cannot keep serving children as a preschool anymore if it were to implement this modification. But many and most reasonable modifications aren't going to fall into those categories. And then the major takeaway from these laws is that children should not be excluded from their school programs based on their disability or their disability-related behaviors. And then in addition, the IDEA, which we already talked about, is a law that provides some support for children who might face these issues. So under this law, eligible children can receive early intervention services. And if they are in a preschool, they're likely going to receive those services in the preschool setting. And in addition to those laws, there are also some program considerations to keep in mind. So PHL Pre-K might have some PHL Pre-K specific supports, but also some specific requirements that you need to comply with, which we go into more in our more in-depth presentation if you are interested. But regarding access, especially in considering how children might be disciplined for disability-related behaviors, whether or not they've been recognized yet, ECE programs should be making reasonable modifications to both policies and their practices to integrate children with disabilities into their programs. And your ECE programs should also be providing aids and services to ensure that children with disabilities can equally access the program and its benefits. But again, there are some exceptions to that. It is unless those modifications, aids, or services would create an undue burden or require a fundamental alteration of the program. In addition to these, and in addition to the federal laws, there are also some childcare regulations specific to Pennsylvania that all licensed preschools have to follow. And these include some things that are also captured in the federal laws. So programs should be making reasonable accommodations. Programs should be complying with civil rights laws like the PHRA and ADA, but there are also some specific regulations around permitting adults who are providing services to children with disabilities to deliver those services. So allowing a children's service providers to provide the services in the preschool, allowing parents access to the center while their children are there, and communicating with parents in a language that they understand, among others. And here I just have an overview of the laws. We've talked a little bit about the ADA, PHRA, and the IDEA, but there are also several other civil rights laws here that could come into play and are good to know about, and which we discuss more in our longer training. And the other side of this that's really important to know about is the resources and supports that are available for families and for providers. So first, it might be collaboration and advocacy with early intervention and behavioral health service programs. So working with EI teams and behavioral health teams to find the supports that are most effective for this child and make sure that they're taking place appropriately and effectively. And also, if a child is not receiving these services but would benefit from them, considering whether that child should be referred for an evaluation so that they can get connected with these supports that can benefit them in your classroom. There are also referrals that can be made for infant and early childhood mental health consultants who can observe what's going on in the program and help provide support. There are supports specific through your contracting program, such as Family Navigators, which there is a whole nother presentation on and lots of good information out there. And then also keeping in mind data collection, how you're collecting data, when you're collecting data, and what you're collecting it for. And some of that data can be really useful in advocating for greater supports for children, including in the EI system, and then how you're approaching these conversations with families. So having policies and practices and just knowing how you're going to approach data and then the conversation with the family that might come from having that good data, especially on challenging behaviors. So that might be when behaviors are happening, why they're happening, what was happening that day that could have led to this, but it can help make better decisions down the line. And then also professional development for staff. So building staff's capacity to handle these issues as they come up and ensure that classrooms are inclusive. And then what can ELC do? So if you are working with a family who's experiencing barriers to getting those supports, or they are supposed to be getting LWIN services or other services, but those aren't happening appropriately or they aren't enough, you can always feel free to connect that family with ELC. And I will send our helpline number in the chat, but always feel free to connect families with us. But once we get involved, we can advocate for appropriate supports for the child or to remove barriers to accessing programs or EI services. We can connect families with resources and information on their rights. We can secure compensatory education for settlements for children who haven't been getting their ELWIN services. So if there were services that were supposed to happen but didn't, the children might be entitled to money for other educational services as a result, and we can take a look at that. And then we can also advocate for systemic change. So budget advocacy, big picture policy changes, things like that. So feel free to reach out if you would like support or have a family that would like support. And I think that is the end of our presentation, but if there are any questions, I think Margie and I have a couple minutes for them.
Let's see. Oh, wow, we don't have any questions. We don't have any questions. I actually have a question. So we get a lot of inquiries about toilet training and providers' responsibility to make accommodations if a child enrolls in their program who does not use the toilet independently. Would setting up a changing table in their preschool classroom be an undue burden?
That's a great question. We hear about that a lot as well. And there's actually there's a fair amount of information at the U.S. Department of Justice's website, because they've actually, back in the 90s, did a lot of cases that were related to making sure that daycares, childcare settings were accessible. And that included through toileting. So, what it typically, any of these, I say, and you'll hear if you come to the Spark training, it depends is the answer that as a lawyer I have to say. But what, typically you want to consider for when it comes to toileting is that, well, first of all, is the fact that the child hasn't developed toileting skills, is that related to their developmental delay? Most of the time we see that it is. Most of the time when you have a child who has some sort of cognitive delays or motor delays or other, types of developmental delays that could impact their ability to learn to toilet, then that's the first question. Is it disability related? The second question is then what you're typically looking at, is that a support that's given to some children in, let's say you have a program that serves kids that are younger, that isn't just a pre-K program on your site. If you're providing that support in terms of toileting assistance, changing table, then that's likely something you're going to have to provide for a child with a disability who hasn't learned toileting at that point. And if it is not something that you provide, then the question is, as Joy was sort of saying, could you set that up? Is that something that your staff would provide? It is regularly provided for older students in school age programs. So there isn't really a strong justification for it being an undue burden just because the child is in preschool. So you really want to look at that for sure, reaching out to us if you have questions about that. We'd be happy through our helpline that we put in there that is available to you, and we could go through thinking through this process a little bit more, and it's a similar framework for other types of access issues that families may be coming to you with.
Thanks, Margie. And I see there was a question in the chat that Rose answered already, but it was about whether families where English is not their first language, are those resources available to them, and those supports, are they available? And Rose answered yes, that they are. So
yeah.
All right, well, that is a great segue into me sharing a little bit about our ECMH and family navigation supports for this year. So, as many of you know, we have early childhood mental health consultation in PHO Pre-K. And some of the supports that we provide is that we do consultation for referred children. So typically you would complete the request form, and that form goes directly to the PA key, and then it gets triaged to PHO Pre-K. We receive the form, and then one of our consultants will follow up with you to do like an intake, get some more information, and then they will schedule a couple of observations. After those observations, they will schedule an action plan meeting with the teacher, the director, the parent, and themselves, of course, and they'll go through those observations, and then together, everyone will come up with strategies to support the child. And so that connects with the social emotional teaching strategies that we have here. We also support PHO Pre-K programs and parents in accessing more intensive services. So there are times when a child's needs are beyond what we can provide in PHO Pre-K. And when that happens, we will work with the family and the provider to secure maybe things like ABA therapy, or sometimes it's play therapy, some type of out-based therapy we can support with. And then the other thing that's very unique about our ECMH model is that we offer home visits. So these home visits can be physically in the home with the family, where we can see the home environment and then offer strategies on how the caregivers can support the child's behavior in the home. Sometimes they're virtual, right? And again, the family's sharing what their concerns are, and then our consultant will provide strategies for that family. For family navigation, we support families of children who have been referred to Elwyn or are in the pipeline of being referred. So let's say that you completed the ASQ, the child scores within the threshold where they need to be evaluated. You speak with the family's on board with it. But of course, right, there's a lot of follow-up in the process to actually getting that child evaluated. And so our family navigator can support with that, right? It might be following up, right, to say, do you know when this is going to get scheduled? Anything really that helps move the process along, our family navigator can support with that. We also can support families with accessing appropriate funding for behavioral health services. Again, there are times when a child's needs are beyond what we can offer in PHO Pre-K, and the child may need therapeutic services. And so we can connect families with medical assistance or, some type of funding to help secure those services. And then in some cases, we support families in crisis and connect with community resources. Typically, that's when the child is already receiving family navigation support. So for those families or children that are not already receiving family navigation support, we would connect the family to our family engagement coordinator. So we have a couple of new things for FY26. We have a new email address. So if you have any correspondence for our ECMH consultants or family navigators, please email phlprkeiteam@phmc.org. So that's where you would maybe ask a question, maybe follow up on a request that has been submitted already. You could use that email address. Please continue to submit Family Navigator request forms to the link provided on the slide. So we really do need those forms to still go through that process, and then a Family Navigator will follow up with you. Also, please continue to submit early childhood mental health consultation requests to the PA Key email address. Again, the PA Key really needs to get that form so they can input what they need into their system, and then they will triage it to PHL Pre-K. Something else that's new this year is that we have Family Navigator caseloads. So each program in PHO Pre-K in the PHMC contract entity has been assigned a Family Navigator. So this means that you have your person, right? It could just be anything small to big, right? That you can reach out to your family navigator about. You should have received an email at this point where they are introducing themselves to you and explaining the services that they can offer. If you have a specific case, we do ask that you still complete the Family Navigator request form, but your assigned Family Navigator will be the one that receives that form and will follow up with you. And so here I share that Lauren Wiggin is the Family Navigator for providers that begin with A through LA. And Karen Dorlis is the Family Navigator for providers that begin with LE through Z. Okay, I'll check and see if we have any questions. Is there a link for the Family Navigator request? Yes, so there is a link, and when you receive one, it's always in the provider update. So if you go to the I think it's called the Social Emotional Resources landing page in the provider update, you can get all of the ECMH and family navigation forms there, and the link is there. The link is also in this PowerPoint presentation, so when you receive the provider update on Friday, it will be in there. And I'll try to actually drop it in as well, but it's in many different places. And is the case law according to provider's last name? No, it's the first. It's first. It's the first, like the first word of the name. That's how it's assigned. Okay. So for example, a child's first step, right? That would go to Lauren because she's A through LA. All right, so we are going to move on. I'm not sure, Erin, have you joined us yet?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, all right, great. So I will turn the presentation over to Erin, who will present on our NEAR evaluation.
Thanks, Joy. Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Harmeyer, and I work at the National Institute for Early Education Research at Rutgers University. I'm just going to talk with you all briefly about the class observations that we're conducting in your classrooms this school year. On the next slide, there's just an overview of the purpose of the evaluation that we've been conducting in partnership with the Office of Children and Families and Spark and PHMC, going on 10 years now. Our goals with the evaluation are really to partner and provide detailed accounts of classroom quality for all of PHL Pre-K and to really get into a comprehensive understanding of the classroom environment and teaching practices. The third bullet point I really want to highlight here about informing a data-driven CQI or continuous quality improvement approach. We really don't want these observations to be viewed as kind of a gotcha type of thing, but rather something that's meant to be helpful to you all, where you can take the data and look through it and really think through, these are the strengths and these are the challenges in my classroom or classrooms this school year, and here's ways in which I want to improve practice overall. And so it's meant to be supportive to both directors and administrators in driving program quality improvement. So I'll walk you next just briefly through the tool we're using, which is the same tool we used last year, the Classroom Assessment Scoring System for Pre-K, and we're using the second edition of the tool, which is very similar to the first edition. The CLASS is a standardized and research-based observation instrument. It was developed to assess classroom quality in preschool classrooms, and it gives you feedback across 3 domains: emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. On the next slide, we've just kind of broken down a little bit more about what each of those domains means. They have a number of dimensions within them. So with emotional support, what the observers are really looking at is the emotional connection that the teacher has with the children, whether there's any expressed negativity in the classroom. Is the teacher sensitive to children and aware and responsive to their needs and their developmental abilities? Are they tuned in to their motivations and their interests? The classroom organization domain is getting more into your routines and your structures and your classroom management. So, are children spending overly long amounts of time in routines and in transitions, or are we really maximizing children's learning time so that they're engaged with what's going on around them and really able to learn from the lessons and activities that you're providing for them? And then instructional support is the final domain. And this just really gets into the usage of you and of the teachers with discussions and activities that promote higher order thinking skills in children. So are we prompting their thought processes? Are we engaging in feedback loops with them where it's kind of this back and forth between the teacher and the child? Is there a lot of analysis and reasoning and higher level thinking going on? On the next slide, I know this one's small, so I'll just kind of talk you through what this is. But I mentioned that we've been partnering with PHL Pre-K kind of throughout the program duration and providing this program level data every single year across all of the classrooms to really give you all a sense of kind of where programs are and where programs are moving over time. The class does give you a score with a range of 1 to 7 across the 3 domains that I mentioned. And then you'll also see here on this table, there's dimensions within each domain. So with emotional support, we have the dimensions of positive climate, negative climate, teacher sensitivity, and regard for student perspectives. We next then have the classroom organization domain, which is broken into the dimensions of behavior management, productivity, and instructional learning formats. And then under the instructional support domain, we have concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. And I just put 2 arrows on there to really highlight 2 examples of dimensions that can be quite challenging to really foster in the classroom that we saw some positive growth of from last school year, the school year previous to last school year. And that was in, as I mentioned, concept development and language modeling. So those scores were at 2.22 and 3.15 last year, which represented growth from the previous school year in which we measured those dimensions. So some positive growth, and again, an example of the ways that we're hoping to provide data that you all can use to continue to improve classroom quality over time. On the next slide, you can see just some examples. Do you mind going back one, Joy? Sorry. I might have missed it. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I thought through one more thing I wanted to mention before I got into the nitty-gritties, because I know you and I talked about this through email, which is sometimes providers ask questions about, I want my scores to improve and what do the scores mean? And I really just wanted to highlight that, especially on some of those dimensions underneath that instructional support domain. It may be that what the observer is noticing is just that there isn't the presence of some of those higher level types of skills that we find underneath the concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. So the observer may not notice that there's scaffolding going on, or that there's connections to the real world, or that there's the types of questions that encourage analysis and reasoning. So those more open-ended types of questions. So it's not necessarily that there was the presence of, oh, I saw X, Y, and Z negative thing, but there was an absence of these types of higher-ended questions or of prompting thought processes in children or engaging in the feedback loops with them that encourage some of those higher order thinking skills. Okay, so then getting into, sorry to make you go back and forth, to the nitty gritty of the observations. I know for most of you, these are not new, so we're following just a very similar protocol to what we've done in years prior with the observations in terms of their duration and kind of our overall protocol. What we are doing is sending you your scheduled date of your classroom observation to try and make sure we keep the flow of observations moving throughout the fall for some of you who are observed this fall, and then in the winter starting in January for everybody who will be observed that's not observed this fall. And so we'll email you your observation date about 10 to 14 days before your observation. We'll keep that date in, except if you tell us that that's going to be an atypical day. So we don't schedule observations on days in which you might have a field trip, or there's an assembly going on, or it's a short day, or your teacher is taking leave that day, or has a sick day, or whatever the case might be. If you tell us that, we're happy to reschedule because we don't want to come on an atypical day, but otherwise we'll send you that date that we're coming, and then we'll follow just kind of this similar protocol of the observation lasts between 2.5 and 3 hours to allow for those 5 cycles of the class tool to be observed and documented. Our observers will always get there 10 to 15 minutes before the start of the school day, and they'll have all their materials and their score sheets with them. They'll try and ask you just a few touch base questions before the observation starts. But then for the rest of the observation, it's really their goal to remain as unobtrusive as possible and kind of minimally interact with children and teachers. So they're just kind of taking notes and observing, but not trying to impede your progress on the day. Our data collectors do all have the required background checks per the City of Philadelphia, as well as per Rutgers. They are trained in confidentiality and in human subjects research protocols, and they're also trained on reliability of the tool each year. So our observers, even if they were on the team last year, which many of them were, they're going through that training again this week, just to get refreshed on the tool and make sure that they're using it as intended by the tool developers. And one final note, they're not able to share results just at the time of the observation. We do go through kind of a lengthy and rigorous cleaning process in which we look through all the notes to ensure that they've provided evidence for why they're scoring classrooms the way they're scoring them. We make sure that all makes sense before that gets entered into our data file, which then gets checked before we can send that data onward. So it does take a little bit while to get those results forwarded to your programs. If you have any questions ever at all about anything, you're always welcome to email me or anybody on my team. On the next slide, I have my email address and phone number there. Oh, I think that's the one I was thinking about earlier. Sorry, this one I didn't realize was right here. And so let me walk you through this before I give you my contact information. But I did just mention, I think sometimes it's helpful to see kind of the big picture of PHL in the overall context of other state and city funded pre-K programs. So there's other programs on these charts as well: Tulsa, New York City, San Antonio, Seattle. So you can see on the black bar on the very end where kind of the PHL pre-K program results are, which are pretty similar to other state and city funded programs. We tend to see higher scores on that emotional support domain and on the classroom organization domain, and on instructional support lower, and always kind of trying to push to 3 or above, or some studies say 3.5 or above on instructional support. And then with classroom organization and emotional support 5 and above, it tends to be what research shows supports those high quality experiences for children. So doing great on those domains. And as I mentioned, we're seeing growth in the instructional support as well. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide you with results that you can use them to inform classroom instruction. So on the final slide, sorry for confusion on my end, there we go. My contact information is there, phone and email, and you oftentimes will hear from Charlie and Clarissa as well. We're always happy to hear from you. We're really grateful to you all for keeping in touch with us and welcoming us into your classrooms. I know sometimes there can be last minute changes and things, and you all are so great at working with us and making sure that we get these all completed every year. So we're really grateful to you all for welcoming us, and always happy to take any questions you have or any concerns.
Okay, let's see. No, I think we're good. I don't think we have any questions at this time. All right, thank you so much, Erin. Thank you.
Thanks so much, you all. Take care.
Mhm. All right, at this time, I would like to welcome a few new PHL Pre-K PHMC team members. So we have Ruby Shedrick, a provider service specialist. We have Karen Dorlis, a new family navigator. Melissa Greer, who is our new ECMH and family navigator supervisor, and Shane Campbell, who is our data and performance manager. So we want to say welcome to the PHL Pre-K team. At this time, we will have some enrollment updates.
Cool. Good afternoon again, Jennifer Harris, the Enrollment and Family Engagement Manager, here to share some things about enrollment. We are currently, want to first give a shout out to 95 centers as they are at 100% enrollment. Kudos to you. We ask that you all do continue working towards the 100% enrollment, as the benchmark for that is September 30th, 2025. And once you do reach that 100%, we do encourage you to continue to build your wait list and childcare. Please note that sites not 100% enrolled and with seats that have been vacant for 30 days or more will be at risk for slot reallocation. As of September 15th, we were at 87.88% full, having 4,605 seats full of our total 5,250. Thank you so much for your efforts in getting children enrolled. Enrollment training. I recently held a training that was required for all providers. If you did not attend, please do check your email to watch the video and sign an attestation. We hosted this as a lot of things changed with enrollment this year and has changed within the last couple of years. So we had someone from the Free Philly Pre-K online, Avella, come and share how to navigate the system so you can watch the video or see the presentation to make sure you're doing everything as it relates to enrolling children. A big one is tagging children. As children as children apply online, we just want to make sure that we are laying eyes on the families. And if we're not, or if we're full, we want to make sure we're moving those children to other sites to get them enrolled at a location. So again, be sure to review that video and review the presentation as needed. Enrollment reminders. So we know that families can either apply online or they can complete a paper application. Please note that for the online application, the application must be in submitted status. If it's in progress, my team will not approve it. If it's a paper application, you want to make sure that the paper application, proof of address, and proof of age are all uploaded in Childware. If it's not there, it is not a complete application and my team will not approve it. Final reminder also, just to let you know, a child can be enrolled 48 hours from the receipt of the application. So once you have submitted a child to be enrolled, today is Wednesday, that means the child will be able to start on Monday. If submitted on tomorrow, Thursday, that means the child will be able to start on Tuesday. If it was submitted today, Wednesday, and it did not have the paper application uploaded with the proof of address and proof of age, that child can start to Monday because it won't be approved. Or if the application was in progress, that child won't be able to start. So know that if something is missing, that does delay the start date for that child to begin in the program. Childware. Childware recently offered a new user level in Childware for attendance staff, meaning that if you have a staff that you would like to support you with putting attendance in daily, they can have this training to be able to navigate Childware, access the home dashboard. They can view the child's record, but they cannot make any edits or anything, but they can assist with putting attendance in daily. So provider asked for it and we made it happen. So grateful to the Childware team. If you do have a staff that will benefit from this role, please just have them schedule a one-on-one with Childware and they will get a tutorial and training on how to take attendance. Here you will also see a 1.0 enrollment refresher video, a 2.0 enrollment refresher video. We also have Childware tips. And if any questions related to Childware, please do email them at helpdesk@pagency.org. If it's something related to enrollment and Childware, please do also add phlprek@pagency.org as I work to really honor the date that you first reached out to make sure that we get stuff situated so the children can start as needed. Lastly, again, if ever you have a question, don't hesitate to email us, phlprek@pagency.org. Providers can also call and speak to one of our enrollment specialists or my enrollment and referral coordinator by calling 844-745-7735. Again, Childware questions, go to helpdesk@pagency.org. Families can call the referral line as well, 844-745-7735. We do have an interpreter available. The phones are open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we also have our landing page, All Things Enrollment. If any questions you have about enrollment, it can be found there. But if you want to talk to somebody or just want to confirm again, don't hesitate to email us or call us. Thank you so much for all you do. I wish you an amazing school year.
Thanks, Jen. Nafer. I will now turn the presentation over to Carrie, who will share information about PHL Pre-K deliverables.
Hi, y'all. I'm Carrie, the contracts manager. Let's talk through some deliverables. First, be sure to check out the deliverables landing page. I'll drop it in the chat right now. This also runs in the provider update every time as well. We have the Q2 deliverables checklist available. As you may remember, the checklist helps providers prepare for major FY26 PHL Pre-K deliverables needed to be completed in that quarter. And progress on those deliverables will be discussed at your provider service specialist check-ins. Shane is going to take you through the next few slides.
Good afternoon, Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be talking about the contract deliverables for ASQ and TSG. So for ASQ, this is more of a rolling deadline that is based off of the starting calendar date for the specific child. So both the ASQ SE and ASQ 3 screenings need to be completed either online or on paper. But if you do it on paper, it needs to be uploaded. So everything has to be uploaded online to ASQ Online within 45 calendar days of the child's starting enrollment date. This is especially important for kids who will require additional support or help. So we want to make sure that that is completed so we can get that process started. So for any kids that have moderate concerns, they need to be rescreened within 6 weeks. And then for any kids with high concerns, we want to start the conversations with families as soon as possible, and then also get the referrals going again so we can get them the help and support they need as soon as possible. And we are also hosting an ASQ online refresher session twice. The first one is on September 30th, and then the second one is on October 9th. So if you're new to ASQ or you just need any questions answered, any help, these would be good for you to go to. As for TSG, there is the TSG winter and TSG spring checkpoints that follow a similar guideline. So for TSG winter, it starts in October on October 17th, and then the deadline for that is February 20th. And then for the TSG spring deadline, that is May 15th.
Great, thanks, Shane. On to staff qualifications. Monitoring around this will take place from October 1st through 31st. So prior to monitoring, be sure to update the PD registry with the following things. So list your site director, make sure all classrooms are set up and tagged as PHL Pre-K, assign all lead and assistant teachers to the correct classroom, and also put the number of children in the classroom in that area too. Make sure career pathway levels are up to date for staff. The PA key, when we wanted to highlight, has a new form to complete to request an evaluation or reevaluation for staff. And this form is only for PHL Pre-K staff. It can be found, the link to this new form can be found on our staff qualifications landing page that I just dropped the chat into as well. Also, make sure you're applying for any staff waivers as appropriate. A little more on staff waivers. So please be sure to review eligibility criteria carefully and only request waivers for eligible staff. Upload current or up-to-date enrollment in coursework in the PD registry. Ensure staff are enrolling in coursework by the end of January to remain eligible for a waiver. Individuals applying for waivers for multiple years must show evidence of continued progress. And if you do have any questions about staff qualifications, you can email phlprek@phmc.org. So some fiscal reminders here. So the two boxes on the left-hand side are related to FY25 end of year reporting. So year-end expense reports, if you needed to complete those, they are past due. So you have until tomorrow, that's September 18th, to submit if you have not already. Those that need to do independent external reviews, please complete the form by September 30th to let us know the status of your external review. You can submit your CPA engagement letter there. If you need, you can also request an extension there if needed, which needs to include a compelling reason, your anticipated submission date, and your FY25 year-end expense reports for each PHL Pre-K site in your legal entity. The boxes on the right-hand side relate to FY26 this year. So we will be holding a fiscal training. That's going to be on October 7th at 1 p.m. The link will be in the provider update that comes out on Friday, and I'll just put the registration in the chat right now as well. This training is going to go over fiscal reporting, deliverables, detail the financial systems that providers should have in place to support reporting requirements, and also provides resources as well. And Spark will be attending that meeting to talk about some of their resources. The last box is about mid-years, FY26 mid-years. I know it seems like it's going to be due way, way, way down the road, but I know things come up very quickly. Mid-years aren't going to be due until January 30th, 2026, and you'll get emails about that when we start, having the submission forms available and all of that. But you can start tracking your expenses now. So after your line item budget is approved, the rest of the tabs in that template are the mid-year expense report and then also the year-end expense report as well, if that applies to you. So you can start tracking your expenses as well and make sure your accounting systems are also updated to track your revenue expenses separate from other funding streams. Please complete I'm sorry. Also, I forgot to say that the last thing on the bottom, failure to submit timely fiscal reporting may result in PHL Pre-K invoicing payments being withheld. We really don't want to do that to anybody. So please be sure to turn in your reporting information on time. Some reminders, please complete the contact form if you have not already. I'm dropping that in the chat. Also, remote learning plans were due to be completed, the Cognito form. I'm putting a link to that as well. These will both be in the provider update. So please complete those as soon as possible. Also, if you have exhibits that are not approved, please make sure you make those revisions if requested by your specialist, or if you have not submitted any, submit as soon as possible. You will not be able to receive your PHL Pre-K contract or payment until exhibits are approved and you have a signed contract. For health assessments, providers need to verify that at least one health assessment, including immunizations, is not over a year old. So please upload health assessments for each child in Childware and complete the note. Remember that health assessments should be completed annually and remain current through the program year. And compliance monitoring will be from November to December on health assessments.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions. No, looks like we do not have any questions. All right. Well, thanks, Carrie and Jen, and Shane, for the PHMC updates. So at this time, I will go through some dates to remember. On September 30th, it is our 100% enrollment benchmark. Jen already highlighted earlier that we have many programs who have already reached the 100% benchmark. So we are looking forward to everyone reaching the 100% enrollment benchmark by September 30th. Also on September 30th, there will be the ASQ Online Refresher PD. And also, again, on September 30th, the forms for the FY25 Independent External Review is due. On October 7th, we will have a fiscal training for FY26. On October 5th, there will be the Supporting All Young Learners training, and I believe that session is at 5 o'clock on October 5th. And then October 9th, there will be the ASQ Online Refresher PD. That will be the second one that will be offered. And then on October 15th, again, we will have Supporting All Young Learners. On October 17th, we will do a TSG Child Profile and Classroom Check, which means that our data team will pull the data from the TSG platform, and we will review which children have profiles and which children do not. If we see that there are children that do not have profiles, your specialist will follow up with you to find out if there are any barriers and to provide any support that we can to ensure that all children have profiles in preparation for the January 15th checkpoint. At this time, I would like to say thank you to all of you who have joined us today for the meeting. I want to give a special thank you to our presenters. As you can see, we had a full agenda today. Our PHL Pre-K PHMC management team puts a lot of intention and thought into planning these meetings to make sure that we are sharing information that is relevant and important to you. So just want to say thank you to all the presenters who came together with us to create the meeting that we presented to you today. I wish everyone a great rest of the day, and let's have a wonderful,
Just have one
wonderful.
more plug. I'm so
Oh,
sorry,
yes,
Joy.
that's
I am so sorry, but I just
that's
wanted to
okay.
make sure that everybody knows that Spark is having a PD day on October 3rd, and I dropped the link in the chat. I'm so sorry,
Okay.
Joy. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. All right, everyone, have a great rest of the school year. Bye-bye.